So I'd like to welcome everybody. And my name is Ingrid Surratt. I am the president of the board of directors for CAPS, as we call it, Capital Area Parkinson's Society. And I'm really excited that we are again having Garrick give a second presentation. So the first one was about expected loss and coping with something called anticipatory grief. And what he's going to be talking about today is giving the gift of advanced care planning and basically giving a gift to those you love. So I wanted to give you a quick introduction. You probably already, some of you already know this because you were on the last session. And before I read this, I do want to say that I have known Garrick for a number of years. I was with him in the very start of this. Remember, Garrick, when we were kind of brainstorming an old group together? Garrick just had this wonderful vision of what he wanted to bring to the Austin community. And since then, he has just grown by leaps and bounds and has just done wonderful presentations.
Thank you.
So it's a real privilege for me to be a part of this and be able to introduce him. So he has been a hospice volunteer since 1987, long time.
Wow.
Serving as an on-call hospital and hospice chaplain. He is a Respecting Choices Advanced Care Planning certified instructor and facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
As a certified grief recovery specialist, he co-created with Hospice Austin something called Conversations on Grief, which is a monthly online grief support group. Garrick holds a certificate in death and grief studies from the Center for Loss and Life Transitions. He and his late wife, Kinslow, along with 20 Austin area healthcare advocates, of which I had the privilege to be a part of, co-created Kitchen Table Conversations, an all-volunteer nonprofit providing educational resources that empower people to have end-of-life conversations. Kinslow died in February of 2019, and Garrick was her full-time caregiver and end-of-life companion. Currently, he's studying to become an end-of-life certified care doula. And if you don't know what that is, I'm sure Garrick will explain that to you, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up because being a, it's something that they're oftentimes referred to as a death doula. And Deanna Cochran, who is, I believe, is the godmother of the death doula movement, who lives in Austin, Texas, is who I'm studying with. As a matter of fact, she was my wife's death doula as well. And so basically someone who is a part of the hospice interdisciplinary team when you have hospice services, but not necessarily officially part of the team, just another person who's there to provide support and perspective around end of life and the challenges you face, and as an individual, of course, and certainly as a family, who can provide additional support. And so they really are an important part of the end-of-life experience. If you feel that's an appropriate thing that you want to investigate, you can look up death doulas or quality of life care is another station in Austin that offers death doulas as an explanation of what they are and also educates people how to become one. But it's just simply another person who provides care. So today what we're going to do is talk about advanced care planning and advanced care planning as it relates to your loved ones, because advanced care planning is about not only planning for the future, but also helping clear up and not necessarily leave confusion about what your end-of-life wishes are for your loved ones to try and guess or trying to figure out. So today we'll talk a little bit about the 3 Ds of advanced care planning, kind of give you an introduction to this, what they are and why they're important, what advanced care planning is, why it's important. We'll watch a couple of videos and have a conversation here in the next 55 minutes or so on what it is and some of the stories that you may have, some experiences you may have had, But the idea is that we want to just invite you to sit with me at the kitchen table and have a conversation. I'm not going to lecture you in any way, shape, or form because I'm not the expert. I certainly know a little bit about it. I'm going to share with you some stories and personal experiences that you may be able to relate to. I'm sure you have your own stories of family members or yourselves having been involved with someone who is at this stage in their life. Or you have questions or concerns about trying to have these conversations with relatives and loved ones that are challenging because perhaps they're not ready necessarily to have that conversation. So how do you overcome those obstacles? So this will be an introduction to what advanced care planning is, the 3 Ds of advanced care planning, which are decide, discuss, and document. I'm going to break that down into those 3 sections and share with you how to address each one of them. And then if you're looking for a deeper dive into this, I'll be doing a intensive workshop series, 3 90-minute sessions on the 3 Ds starting on August the 17th. And it's being sponsored by AARP. And it's kind of a really deep dive into each one of the aspects of the process of advanced care planning. So you can find that on the kitchentableconversations.org website and register there. Again, the classes are free. I'm going to bring up some material for us to look at. I'm going to share my screen here and share with you kind of the introduction to what we're going to talk about. What are your end-of-life wishes? Maybe you have not, done this before. Let me just kind of go around the room real quick and find, has anybody done this before? Does anybody here have advanced care plan completed and done? And if so, how long ago did you do it?
I have a will and I have a do not resuscitate. The family knows that. The will has an executor, that's all taken care of as to what goes where. I don't know if that counts, but that's what I've done.
Yeah, it's a component of it. On the physical side, in other words, the financial side, the asset side, the will and last testament are important in order to determine what's going to happen with your belongings. What we're going to focus on the healthcare side. What do you do when it comes to your health and what's going to happen to your body after you die? So the do not resuscitate that you're referring to, Victor, I'm assuming you have what's called an out-of-hospital do not resuscitate order.
Yeah, yes, I do.
And that's one of the more complex documents of the 3 in the state of Texas that people can have. We'll talk a little bit about that particular document in a few minutes as well. What about you, Jean? Do you have advanced care plans pulled together?
Yes, we do. We have those all lined out. In fact, I got them out this week to look at.
Okay, you've got the direct physician and family or surrogates and the MPOA, the medical power of attorney.
Right.
Okay, excellent, fantastic. So this will be kind of a review for you, and maybe you can share some of the challenges that you have faced in pulling this together over the course of time. So how long ago did you do the directives?
We did those 2019.
2000, and have you revisited them since?
We revisited them. It was prior to Bruce's diagnosis of Parkinson's disease.
Okay. So what's important about that, which that's fantastic, because ideally you would revisit your advanced directives probably once a year, just to make sure they're current, the wishes are still accurate, and the people that you have involved, that you want to be involved, are documented accurately. In other words, maybe someone's moved, someone's died, they no longer are the person you want to be your medical power of attorney or your alternates. So that's why it's important to, kind of put on the schedule that you're going to review those once a year. So good job, Jean. You guys did a good job. It's great. Okay, Nanya, have you done your advanced directives?
Hi, it's Naina.
Naina, sorry, thank you.
That's okay.
I knew I was not going to get that right.
No, don't worry about it. No, I do not have any advancce directives for myself or my spouse.
Okay.
And I do have, my parents have advanced directives, and that's my primary reason for, it's not really, I guess, in the end. Now I'm learning a lot about what I may need to talk about with my husband and our future planning, although it seems a long distance into the future, but I know that anything can happen at any time. So it's kind of, I'm my mom had, my mom has Parkinson's that is now, that was then diagnosed initially as Parkinson's and then as multiple system atrophy. And that is how I'm connected with the Capital Area Parkinson Society. And my sister actually sent these, this one and the last one from a couple of weeks ago on the anticipatory grief. She sent these out for me and my dad. And neither of them are able to join. So I'm joining for myself and as well just to see what I can share with them. But the advanced care planning documents were completed in 2015 for my mom and my dad, I'm pretty sure. And I've revisited them a little bit. We did get the out of hospital DNR last summer. But I think that that we thought that they were going to answer the questions, and as I'm learning, they don't actually answer a lot of questions. My mom is now mostly nonverbal. She can communicate and vocalize some things, but so we have some. I'm feeling challenged by some of the decisions that we are working through.
Well, listen, if you, whenever you feel you want to just jump in as we talk here together, and again, I encourage you to come to the more in-depth workshop coming up in August for you to ask those questions, because it's in community that we oftentimes find the answers and also find different perspectives on how to approach challenging situations. So feel free to jump in here. Anyone else done their directives or not done their directives? Anne or John, Mary, Ingrid?
Well, I did mine right after we started all this process.
Okay,
so
good.
My husband and I have them all in place.
Awesome. Congratulations, Mary.
And I actually have all my forms. The attorney drew it up, and after an incident that happened, I think I mentioned this on the last one, that it is very important because my loved one that passed away 3 years ago didn't have it, and I'm having to deal with some of that stuff. But I know with my upcoming surgery and things like that, I'm getting things in order and ready to go, because, you know, it is definitely a subject that needs to be discussed. And even like, I'm going to say the name wrong again, Naya. Anyway, like she was saying, it seems so long in the future, but anything can happen. So yes, my forms, I haven't filled them out yet. I've got to get my witnesses.
Yeah.
But
A couple of things about what you said. One is that it's always too soon until it's too late.
yes.
Yeah, that's good.
You can sign these forms at the age of 18. So any time between the time you're 18 and the time you take your last breath, you can do your advanced directives and advanced care plan. And it comes in a different order. Advanced care planning comes first and then advanced directives. So the idea is that, and you don't require an attorney. Attorney is not required to fill out these documents. It is recommended that you have an attorney look over your will and last testament, but not when it comes to advanced directives. That can be done on the back of a napkin, or if you don't want to do any paperwork, you can actually just give those instructions verbally at the time of crisis, if in fact you're conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I do have a question about that somebody at Maravilla just asked me yesterday. Do those documents need to be notarized in order to be legal?
I believe the out-of-hospital DNR does, but the other two do not. For sure. Now, it's confusing. On the medical power of attorney form, it says, looks like a notary, and then it has in the middle, the top part of the page, it has a big or, two competent.
Yeah.
So it's a little confusing, but the medical power of attorney does not have to be notarized.
Okay.
However, there's a couple of after-death documents that need to be notarized, which is the authorization for disposition of remains, as well as who you're going to and what your choices are as far as what you want done with your body. Those two are notary, but those are after death decisions. So
Yes.
we listen to two different categories. One is before death, and one is after death. And there are some things that you can decide, which we go into intimate detail in the third of the 3-part series in August, what those forms are, what they look like, and how to complete them. so that you have, it's more than just your, medical power of attorney, your out of hospital DNR, or your directed to physician and family or surrogates, which is what's called your living will. That's where you stipulate what your wishes are, and we'll show you that today. But those are all the before death documents, but there's several documents after death that are important to have to make the transition, actually the transport, the collection of your body, the transport of your body, and the disposition of your remains much easier for the loved ones if you have these papers completed. So
The thing that's so confusing is, and I guess I know, and I know enough about it to know that there's a difference. So I want to make sure that maybe if there's people on here that don't know it, is that, you're talking about the DNR, the out of hospital and the in hospital, because I know that there is a difference between the two. And I had a friend of mine's mother that didn't want, or had instructions of the DNR, but in the hospital, she had actually passed, but they didn't see that. For some reason, things got messed up. And of course, they resuscitated her and she was livid because she was, 98 years old. She said, I was ready to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was difficult.
There's a very significant difference between the out of hospital DNR and the DNR in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Your out of hospital DNR covers you up until the time you're admitted. Once you're admitted, then you have to request a DNR again. You're supposed to verbally request that in front of the doctor and 2 witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
This comes as a result of some legislation that was passed by the legislative session a couple of years ago and signed into law around closely after that. It's called S11. It's a very onerous and unnecessary step that they put into the process. So once you're admitted, you're supposed to request it again. And your medical power of attorney can request it, but you nonetheless, the request has to be made again and entered into the record. And then you're supposed to, of course, be banded on your wrist, and you also have your room is supposed to have a DNR sign on it. So it's confusing. Texas is a profoundly conservative state, and there's a very tight and very powerful lobby that moved this through for whatever purpose they had, but it was self-serving. And it didn't serve the public. It doesn't serve the individual patient, nor does it make it easy for this to take place. It's just an extra unnecessary step. But nonetheless, it is the law right now. Does that help clarify? So like for in Victor's case, if he was go to the ER, he's fine. He's covered by, he's supposed to be covered. And they're supposed to honor the out-of-hospital DNR until the moment he becomes a patient or admitted to the hospital.
It articulates that pretty clearly in the docs. It's like you say, Gary, it's a wasted step.
Yeah, the SB11 is the total waste. And it's just, it has to do with the special interest group for the most part, that the legislators were very afraid of going against because of their political leanings. So
on death?
Huh?
So it's an interest group on death?
No, special interest group right to life.
Oh, I see. I got it.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense. I gotcha.
Yeah, no, totally. It's not in the best interest of the public, but it simply is in the best interest of their particular agenda. That's for sure. I'm not slighting them for having power to do it. At the same time, it's not in the best interest of everyone. So, but nonetheless, that's the law. So that's the way to differentiate. And that's the moment of differentiation, is at that moment of admission. Anne or John, advance directives or thoughts about that? Have you got them, or you've got questions around them?
This is Anne. Bill and I both have ours, but we haven't revisited them since we updated them in 2017.
Okay.
Long before that, I had disposition of body arrangements with UT San Antonio. And they just required witnesses, not not any more than just signatures. Didn't require a notary. So I guess I need to revisit those.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ann. John?
So this is a do as I say, not as I do situation, which is
Sure.
to say that I tell all of our clients who are typically 50 plus, but especially the younger folks that we have, so in their 30s, you need to go get at least the basic documents. So especially, for instance, we have an unmarried couple. They plan to be married eventually, but they do have a child together. So for things like, medical power of attorney and directives, I tried to emphasize they may or may not let the other partner make any decisions for one of you if you were ever had to, if you're in the hospital. So it's something we talk about a lot with our clients. It is not something that my wife and I have set up yet. So put it on our to-do list.
Yeah, good. Yeah, when I now I've got I give people round to it, so they know now that they have a round to it, they can get it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks, John. Well, let me share with you some information that might be helpful in understanding what the process is. Advanced care planning is a process. It's not one and done. And the 3 Ds of advanced care planning are very simply this. First, you have to decide on what you want and who will speak for you if you're unable to speak for yourself. The first part of it is, what is it that you want? What are your decisions? And in the documentation, it gives you 2 choices, whether you have an irreconcilable, a situation where you're not going to recover from, or that you're terminally ill. And that gives you a couple of choices there: either do everything or just provide comfort care. But you can also be very, very specific. If you have dementia, if you have a particular chronic illness, you can also specify more specifically, based on the stage of the illness, as to what you want in what's called additional requests, which is on page number 2 on page 2, top of page 2. And I'll show you that in just a moment, where you can be very, very specific. You can add addendums where you can be very, very specific about what you do and don't want. Antibiotics, CPR, artificial nutrition, like a ventilator, be intubated and be on a ventilator. All those things are part and parcel of being very specific about what you do and don't want. You also, in this first of the 3 Ds, is you're going to decide who's going to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. Who's going to step in and be your voice? Because let's say that you become unconscious, you go into a coma. Who's going to be your voice? Who's going to represent you to the docs and help track the course of your treatments? That person, of course, has access to your medical records, and they, of course, have heard from you directly what it is that you want in different scenarios and situations. Certainly the essence of what it is that you want. If they're in unknown territory, they're guided by what your intention was, which was, I want to live a quality life. I don't want to, necessarily be in a situation where I can't be with my kids, or I can't be conscious, or I can't be engaged. And so therefore, that person's responsible for making medical decisions when you're not able to do that. That person you can come in and out of consciousness as well. When there are decisions to be made and you're not able to speak for yourself, and it's been entered into your medical record that that's the case, then your medical power of attorney steps up, and they can do this either by phone or in person, and they can make decisions on your behalf. And then you may wake up, a couple of days later, and then you're back in charge. And so the interesting thing about advance directives is that you also can change them at any moment in time verbally, as long as you have a decisional capacity. And you can change the person who speaks for you, as long as you're deemed by the doctors as having decisional capacity. So those,
Eric, who determines that you have the capacity to do so?
the doctors, your medical team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, your medical team. And they're the ones that are responsible for assessing you. Like, I went on floor at St. David's to see a friend of mine, and I just happened to walk in at the time that she was having difficulty, and she was confused. Her chemistry was way, way off, and the docs were just immediately asking, well, what does she want? I said, well, I'm not her medical power of attorney, but I know who is. So I got them on the phone, and they were able to, right away, And the odd thing was, of course, that the staff should have known who that person was, and they shouldn't have been asking me. But there's a bunch of communication components to this that are important for you to, communicate with abandon to all the members on your team. And if you're in the hospital, is to make sure that someone is advocating for you while you're in the hospital as a party who's interested, either your medical power of attorney or someone, in this case with my late wife, I was both her advocate as well as her medical power of attorney. And so bottom line was that I was able to advocate for what she wanted while she was there. And that's an important role to have, or have someone with you, because that makes sure that the communication between shifts and with the hospitalist, who you've never met before, most likely, it's not going to be your primary care physician, that the communication is as good as it can be, because someone's consistently providing information and paperwork. In other words, you're going to give them a copy of your, make sure that you have a copy of your advance directives, your medical power of attorney, so that that's in the record when you come onto the floor. It's one of the things you want to pack in your go bag. If you have a possibility of going to the hospital, in your go bag, you make sure that you have a copy of your medical directives, your advance directives. The second of the 3 Ds is discuss, learning how to have these conversations with your loved ones. Once you come to terms with what it is that you want, how are you going to communicate that to your loved ones and your healthcare professionals? It's so important for your loved ones to know what it is your wishes are, so they can be as supportive as they possibly can. You're not necessarily asking them to agree with you, because and oftentimes that's not the case. They may not be emotionally capable of feeling that that you're making decisions that will take you away. They think they'll take you away from them. But at the same time, you're asking for them to respect what it is that you're asking for, and making sure you put in place the people who can advocate for what those wishes are. And they may not be your family members. They may not be your spouse. They may not be your children. They may be someone who has the emotional capacity to be able to do that kind of work, and allow them to grieve and mourn accordingly, without being burdened with making very difficult decisions, or what can be very difficult decisions in the heat of the moment. Because oftentimes when it comes down to making decisions like that, oftentimes it's very quick. There's lots of things to consider. And so you want someone who is clear-minded and able to represent you in a balanced way, and not necessarily be distracted by the emotions of the moment. And that's a tremendous amount of freedom. It really is something that's very special to be able to do for someone. At the same time, it really does free the family to just be a family. I can tell you from my personal experience with my late wife that I wish we had gotten onto hospice sooner, because it would have provided me an opportunity to be more her husband than her caregiver. And there's a difference. Mm-hmm. And so these are things to consider and to think about as you go making these plans. So communicating what you and how to communicate that with your doctors and with your loved ones, along with the paperwork to back it up, is important to learn how to do that. Then, of course, the last stage in the advanced care planning process is the directives themselves, where they become put into a document, and you basically start listing and detailing out what exactly it is that you want at the end of life and who is going to speak for you. And you want to make sure everyone's on the same page, basically, and literally are on the same page. So everybody in your family has a copy. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes people say, well, gee, I've got my advanced directives done. Great. I got my last will and testament done. Fantastic. And where are they? Well, they're in the safe. What safe? The deposit box at the bank. Okay. Well, first of all, if they're in the safety deposit box at the bank and you die, your last will and testament is not accessible because you are no longer able to open the safe. Nobody else is able to open the safe either.
Details, Garrick, details.
I'm sorry. God is in the details, right? The point is that the idea is that ideally what you would do is create what's called when I die file. When I die, this is the file you pick up, and in that is all my passwords. I mean, we give you a list of 20 things that you should put in that file in the class, so that you understand that there are things that you can create, you can put in that file to ensure that this transition into your accounts and your money, your finances, access to all the things that people need access to in order to transition, are there for those people and make it their job easier.
Yeah.
So what we say is that, hey, listen, document and then distribute with abandon. So get your advanced directives, your advanced care planning done, document it, so you create the directives themselves, and then you're able to distribute them with abandon. And we give you actually a spreadsheet where you can actually track where you've sent them and where you've given them. So if they change, you can go back and change them. We don't recommend that you change them by just initialing and making marks on the page. If you're going to make changes to your advanced directives, we suggest you start with a brand new document. And that ensures that there's limited misinterpretation and ambiguity as far as, did they sign this? When did they sign this? Is that really their initials? Is that really their signature? So we take all the debate out of it by just doing a new document when you refresh or you update. So that's the idea. So those are the 3 Ds: decide, discuss, and document your end of life wishes.
This is where I really like the idea that it's a gift that you're giving your family.
Yes.
You know, we used to have a healthcare agency, and I can't tell you how many times if someone passed away, and they did not have these things in place, siblings would be fighting with each other. Sisters and brothers would be fighting because everybody was guessing what it is that their loved one wanted. And that loved one never went through these 3D processes to let them know. So it is truly a gift.
It is. I've walked in the waiting room at the ICU in hospitals as chaplain and heard families yelling at each other.
Oh, yeah.
Mom is in the next room, so to speak, the proverbial next room, dying, and they're arguing and they're fighting with each other. Where when the communication isn't good within the family, it's where we call death divides. And sometimes, people will have these conversations, have these arguments, and they won't speak to each other for years, if not the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all up to us, the living, to decide how that goes in some way, shape, or form, and to have the conversations. And I don't mean one conversation, I mean a process. And over the course of time, we've had these conversations at my house as a kid. I started when I was, we traveled a great deal as a family during the summers in between school. And so my mom and dad were always wanting to reassure us as to everything was taken care of if something were to happen to them. And so we've had these end of life conversations, but most people don't, but they don't because they're afraid of death. But in fact, my understanding, the mortality rate in Travis County is still trending at 100%. And if that's the case, then we have to come to terms with the fact that we will at some point depart. And our responsibility is to create as smooth a departure, a ramp of departure as we can, because it's within our power to communicate what it is that we wish. And it just makes a huge, huge difference because the death informs the grief. The death shapes the grief, actually. And so you have people who are bickering and arguing, you wind up leaving them very, very much open to complicating their grief and their mourning afterwards with guilt and shame, because did I make the right decision? Did I not make the right decision? And oftentimes that decision making, they somehow believe that they had the capacity to kill someone, but in all honesty, they don't. The body takes care of itself. We had to take them, I had to make the decision to take them off life support, I killed them. No, the body wasn't able to survive without artificial support. We're all on life support right now. It's internal life support. And so we're walking around in this beautiful body that has the ability to maintain itself and move forward. And then sometimes when we become in a weakened state and we can't do that, then we have artificial support, which means that at some points we have to take us off that machine. Normally it's no longer than 6 months anyway, regardless. And if sometimes the body will respond and say, I got enough rest to be able to come back and initiate and continue to provide internal support. And there are times, many cases, where that's not possible, but the body's the one that decides. We don't decide. We just have to be conscious of the fact that this is available and we use it accordingly, but after you have to remove it, the body will tell you whether it's able to maintain that on its own or not. But you can't stay on life support, i.e. ventilation, for typically more than 6 months or so. Just as an FYI. Any other comments or questions so far on what we talked about so far?
Eric, I had just a statement. When you said that you could write your advance directives on a napkin or a piece of paper or something. Ironically, my 15-year-old son that passed away from suicide, of course, no documents were drawn up or anything at that time, but he had, 19, 21 notes of what he wanted done with everything, including his body and where he wanted to dispose of it. So it can be done. It was a terrible tragedy, but it saved us from having to wonder what he wanted. So older, it is so important to have that stuff written down.
Thank you. What was your precious son's name?
Brian.
Brian is his name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry that happened, Jean.
Thank you. It's been 23, 24 years.
Wow.
Thank you, Jean. So why do we do advanced care planning? What is it? Why do we do it? And the document basically goes through and just says that it's a process that supports adults at any age, 18 or older, to gain an understanding and sharing of their personal goals, life goals, preferences regarding future medical care. The goal is to help ensure that people receive the medical care that's consistent with their values, goals, and preferences. That's the objective. There's a Self-Determination Act we'll talk about here in a minute. It was passed into law, Patient Self-Determination Act in 1990. Somehow we had to have a law passed to tell us we had self-determination, when in fact we've had it all along. But the law helped understand within the medical community that the doctors don't have 100% say. The patient has a right and a responsibility to become informed as to what it is that they want, and to make sure that they are properly advocated for, to ensure that those treatments are consistent with their values, goals, and preferences. So this is about aligning what your medical care is with what your goals are, and taking responsibility for informing yourself as to how to document those and make sure that that's communicated clearly to your medical team. And we went through this with Kinslow, is that she had a team, and each member of the team got a copy of her advanced directives and had a discussion over the course of time with regards to what her wishes are. And that helped them understand what her treatment plans could be and wouldn't necessarily be, but that was always taken into consideration when there was a discussion as to what the next treatment protocol was going to be. So the second paragraph here in yellow is the ACP requires communication between patients, their family, and their healthcare providers, and it's best done with consideration of the patient's relationship and culture, which will then drive specific medical treatment decisions that can be recorded in an advance directive. So there may be some cultural considerations. There may be any one of a number of different points that you want to take into account when you say, here's what I want, here's what I don't want. Perhaps the most wrenching question patients and families face is, which treatment is right for me? The answer in this question depends upon the patient and his or her own goals, values, and preferences, and cannot be accurately predicted by a clinician, or, this is important, or the family. Oftentimes when you go through this process of advanced care planning and you really dive into what it is that you want, you become more intimate with what it is that you want. You become clearer. And then with that clarity, you're able to perhaps communicate more clearly, more deeply with your loved ones. And they then become aware of and able to meet you, learn more about you, and just be closer to you at a deeper level because you're able to articulate what it is that you want in this situation. I'll give you an example. My cousin, her husband was diagnosed in February, at the end of February, 1st of March, with pancreatic cancer. And they thought they were at Emory University and happened to be the world's expert on this particular very unique kind of pancreatic cancer. And they said that he recommended chemo. And they said, well, let's give it a shot. But after the first round of chemo and verification through MRI that there was little to no change, he said, I'm not going to do chemo anymore because the quality of life I want doesn't include having chemo. So he stopped. And then he died 60 days later. But that was his choice. And the quality of life he had was just amazing because they have 4 children. And this family is so big, they have their own zip code. That's how big they are. Just amazing. And so he wanted to have all his children around him, his grandchildren.
Wow.
And it was very tender, very sweet. But that was his decision. So I want the quality of life. The chemo might get me something, but it would get me something and I would pay dearly for it now. And now is the only time I know. So now I want to be out without the chemo and have that quality of life. So those are the kind of decisions that you may be faced with, may not. But this conversation with regards to what your preferences are, your goals, your values, is important to prepare you for that if in fact they were to come up, and particularly to prepare your loved ones. So again, you're on the same page. So the ACP, it helps patients prepare for current and future decisions about their medical treatment and place of care. It's a continual process as things change. And so the idea is that you're prepared for those medical dilemmas that are presented. So there's a discussion here. In this document, I can provide you if you like, so that you can use this not only for your own refresher, but also perhaps in communicating with others.
Yeah, you could put that in the chat box if you would like to get a copy of any of these documents.
Yeah, I'm gonna, if you just send me an email, send me your email address in the chat box, or send it to Garrick at kitchentableconversations.com or .org. So Garrick at kitchentableconversations.org, and just let me know that you want a copy of these 9 pages I'm reviewing with you today. So these are the benefits which you'll be able to review when you take a look at this. And then let's see here. These are the advance directives that we're talking about in the state of Texas. And they are mainly the directive to physician and family surrogates or the medical power of attorney. Then we have the other documents that you can also have, which is out of hospital donation of your organs and tissue, body disposition, of disposition of remains, and then authorization for disclosure of protected healthcare information. This is authorization to allow someone to have access to your medical records so that they may be able to either clear up insurance or contend with the insurance companies. And then this gives you the historical history around the Patient Self-Determination Act in 1990, where it basically stipulated, and from that day forward and forever, that the patient is in charge. These are 10 myths and facts that comes from the American Bar Association, and they're excellent in relationship to some of the challenges people come up with. They're myths. Basically, you must have a living will to stop treatment near the end of life. Of course, that's false. Treatment is no longer helping, can be stopped without a living will. Physicians will generally consult with your healthcare agent or close family when they cannot speak for yourself. The goal is to make the decision you would make if you had the capacity to speak for yourself. However, having an advance directive would make the right decision easier and help avoid family disputes. So the idea is that you definitely want to make sure you get these 2 documents in place, both your medical power of attorney as well as your directive to physician and family or surrogates. They create the roadmap for your healthcare at the end of life. Another myth is you have to use attorneys, statutory documents, which we went over before. You can actually write this on the back of your hand. You can actually give it verbally. You can change anything that you have written verbally as well at any time. So there are various ways to access these documents, which are in this document. I'll show that to you in a moment. They're legally binding, so doctors have to follow them. That's not true. The doctor can recuse themselves like a judge if they find themselves in conflict. But the bottom line is that the intention is to make sure you have the conversation, make sure that you have the right doc, you have the right medical team on board to support you. And that's why having a conversation with your medical team is important. Make sure everybody's on the same page. So there's more of these myths, which I encourage you to read and to study a little bit to get different perspectives, understanding more deeply what it is that you want, but also to be able to communicate more effectively with your loved ones when they come up and say, if I name a healthcare proxy, I give up the right to make my own decisions. Well, that's absolutely false. As long as you have decisional capacity, you can make your own decisions. And as long as you have decisional capacity, your medical healthcare proxy or healthcare agent, in the state of Texas called a healthcare agent, does not have a job. They don't have a job if you become unconscious and not able to make decisions on your own. So you don't give up anything. You basically have an asset and someone who can advocate for you at that time of need. So decide, basically there's several steps within this, which is to get ready, get set, and who will speak for you if you're unable, who the person would be, who should choose, and how do you prepare them. And this all comes from this particular booklet right here. This is a document provided by the Conversation Project called the Conversation Starter Kit, or Starter Guide now. And they've rewrote it after 6 or 7 years in the market. They've redone it, and they've added some nice features from the experience they've had. So this will walk you through over 12 pages, step by step, what it is that you need to do to prepare. Some questions you ask for yourself, understanding what it is that you want, what matters most to you, and then walking you through a series of these questions so you get more clarity as to what those are. And then it also walks you through is how do you start talking, and then what are some of the icebreakers you use, and then planning out and tips on how to have the conversation. So this guide is a link in this document I'm sharing with you, so that you can see. You can see this document, can't you? It'll stop. Zoom is just always very puzzling to me sometimes. So this document up front, this conversation starter kit.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So let's go back to, so that's where this document comes from. And then there's the second of the 3Ds, which is discussed. And then that's how to discuss with your loved ones and your medical team. And so we go back to the same page and we pick up the how to choose a healthcare agent or healthcare proxy, and then also how to be a healthcare proxy, but then how to have a conversation with your medical team. So your guide to talking with your healthcare team is available here as well. So the conversationproject.org, and you just go to the resource section. It's called Get Started. And underneath that, you'll find these documents, which you can download and use as workbooks to actually implement the 3 steps that we're talking about: decide, discuss. And then of course, when you come to the point of document, then you're going to be talking about these documents here from the state itself, which you can find on the Kitchen Table Conversations website. And these are directed to for Texas. So this document is the directed to physician and family or surrogates. And so you download that document and complete it. And we walk through this in great detail in the workshop in August. When we come to the section on the documentation, the medical power of attorney, you can see that out of hospital, do not resuscitate, organ donation, disposition of remains, and also the body disposition authorization. So those are all available here on this website, as well as the documents, although not all of them are, but the most important ones are available on the Texas website. And that is where you have the directed to physician and family or surrogates, medical power of attorney, and then the out of hospital, do not resuscitate. Those are the 3. The two most important ones are these 2, the directed to physician and medical power of attorney, unless you're in a situation where you've decided that this is important, but this is normally out of hospital DNR is normally, it's a smaller percentage of people who actually have one of those in place. Okay, so the most important thing is that when you do access and storage, go to the resource section on the Kitchen Table Conversation website, and you can see all sorts of options on where to store those documents. And ideally, you put them in your phone, or you put them on a server somewhere, a service or a server somewhere that you can access them by phone or electronically. So that if they're on your phone, you can actually send them and show them on the in the moment if you need to. So taking pictures of them, putting them on your phone, creating a PDF, they're all in that file, and uploading them to these different places and organizations where you can store, and then you can access. They even have one organization. Let me see if I can bring that one up for you so that you can see it. Let me see here. I know it's here in this website somewhere. Here we are. Where is it? My directives. There it is. This organization is free of charge. This basically, you can upload existing documents, create a digital advanced care plan, and name your healthcare agent. It's called mydirectives.com. And you can store it here. This, I believe these guys actually have an icon that works on a Apple iPhone, where if you touch the, it'll open up directly to a video of you. You can make videos and you can give your directives verbally via video. So there's an option for how you store it or how you access it. But there are a number of different places like this where you can access, or you can place your wishes. So you can take a look at our website, and I update this, pretty regularly, changes over the course of time. Some of this is mixed in with like Vital Talks and having important conversations. This is an educational program. So there's a bunch of different pieces in this resource, but there are another organization called Empathy that just opened an app. It's on the on your phone. It's called Empathy, and they actually help you with navigating after death. So those who are left behind, they'll actually walk you through the process and the steps that you need to manage your way through as you're closing out estates and moving things around, taking care of the fundamental, the physical things that have to do with the life after death. So that pretty much concludes the fundamental introduction to the advanced care planning, the 3Ds of advanced care planning. Let's open it up again to questions and thoughts about what I've said so far, or things that you've experienced that you want to share.
Okay,
First
so
of all,
I
this
did-
has been
Go
great,
ahead, go ahead.
Derek. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Victor.
I have investigated one thing very seriously, and it's not legal. I found out that I wanted a Viking funeral, and you can't do that.
What's a Viking funeral?
You get in a boat, you get a funeral pyre, they light the funeral pyre, and you go down the river.
I think
And
that
what-
I think you keep the research going, because I think it's available
Is it really?
in some places, yeah.
Oh, now I'm excited.
Yeah. I would keep the Viking funeral thing alive. Because
Yes.
recently there was somebody found a way to make it available somewhere.
You're teasing me, Garrett.
No, I'm not telling you. I wouldn't do that. Too serious. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll keep looking.
Yeah, because I think the other day I heard somebody ask the same question on one of the classes I was in, and I believe they said, "Oh yeah, so and so and such and such." I didn't think to write it down, but keep Googling Viking.
I'll keep looking.
Yeah.
You have Viking blood in you, Victor?
I think so. I'm told that. So I just think it's cool, Ingrid. That's a good way to go.
Right.
It does sound very cool.
Now you can be put on a pyre in Colorado has a place that you can do this. Not down the river, but at a physical location in Colorado. It's legal.
Wow.
Colorado. I was just there. Okay. I'll keep looking. I'll report back.
Okay. Other questions about advanced care planning, advanced directives, challenges you're facing talking to loved ones?
I had a question about just, did you want our emails to go in the chat, or do you want us to just send you an email at garrick@kitchentableconversations.org?
Just send me an email at garrick@kitchentableconversations, and I'll give this 9 pages to you. And then also I'll give you the link to register for the August free webinar series on the 3Ds of advanced care planning. Or you can go to kitchentableconversations.org and register there on the front page.
Is that a Zoom meeting, Garrett?
Yes, it's virtual.
Okay.
And that comes with a 150-page handout and homework. So we do get right into it. And so that, all the questions can be answered, and, people can go away from week to week and practice having the conversation with their loved ones and come back and say, well, this worked, that didn't work. I need help with this. Mom is reluctant to have the conversation. Somebody the other day says, my mom just won't talk to me about what we're going to do at her funeral. I said, it's simple. Just tell mom they're going to play Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that there's ways to help the conversation move along, but all with the respect for where people are at, because it is, people find it frightening to talk about their own death. They kind of think like, somehow if I talk about it, it's going to happen. Well, talking about death is much like talking about sex. You're not going to get pregnant by talking about
Right.
You're not going to get dead by talking about death and dying either. So,
That's a really good way to make somebody think about what they really want, though, because a very typical answer is, I don't know. I don't know what I want.
right.
And then you start approaching it, okay, well, so we're going to make some decisions. And like you just said, play Stairway to Heaven or whatever. They very quickly decide what they don't want, and that helps them to decide what they do want.
The other thing too is to approach it from the point of view of what matters most to you. What really matters? You value time with family. You value being able to read the newspaper. You value making sure that you can taste the food you're eating. All those things are what matters most to you. And in that conversation guide from the Conversation Project, they kind of walk you through a series of questions that kind of help you get to start thinking about what it is that you value most. In other words, what matters most to you. So.
I'll just little note in here. My loved one that passed away, he did make it clear that, and personally, we thought he was joking, but he actually, not Highway to Heaven, but he wanted ACD, and he was a country Western person, but he said, no, at my funeral, I want ACDC Highway to Hell. And I'm like, you are just sick, and very, very, very devout, Baptist. And I said, we're not playing that in the church. It's not going to happen. It'll burn or something like that. And he was like, okay, I'm gone. We're so bad.
I won't have to clean up. I'm going to be elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it was close to that, Eric. It really was. But anyway, it was quite funny. So we played it on the way to his burial. So it was,
Oh,
yeah, it was. Anyway, made me laugh when you said that about the Led Zeppelin song.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very much for coming, for your questions and your willingness to share. Again, I invite you to come to the August classes that start on the 17th, 24th, and 31st from 10:30 to 12 in the morning. Again, 150-page handout, homework in between, actually get into the nitty-gritty of troubleshooting some of the challenges you're having with regards to having conversations or you're sorting out what it is that matters most to you. Certainly, there's no right or wrong way to do this other than just getting started and down that road and getting it done. Remember,
and, a little footnote to this too, Garrick, is that it is important to update these.
Yeah.
If you did one 5 years ago and things have changed a lot, you might want to relook at this.
absolutely.
And figure out, what has changed and how you've changed and how your wishes have changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Garrick, I have a question about the webinars coming up, because what I would like to do is send them out to our folks on our mailing list if that's okay to do.
Sure. Absolutely.
My question, if that is okay to do you have a limit and a deadline of your registration for those classes?
No, not at all.
Okay. Would that be okay? I put that.
Yeah, and all the information is on the Kitchen Table Conversations website.
I looked it up and I thought that would be great. Kind of caveat to this, say if you've missed any of it, please, I think this is important information to have.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Garrick, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for all of us for both sessions were absolutely wonderful and just so full of information. I encourage you all to go to the website for Kitchen Conversations to find out more in detail what Garrick talks about. I highly encourage you to take part in the August 17th. And John, you might want to share some of this information with your people and then use some of this for yourself as well. So we do these on a recorded basis. So we will be working on having this available on YouTube. The recordings that we give for our monthly presentations will be there. It's a great way for you to review lots of information that you've gotten today. And
we
check out. Go ahead. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
You don't delete them.
We don't delete them, right? So thank you all so much for coming.
Okay.
Stay tuned for our next program. And Garrett, all the best and thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. We're thrilled. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.